Salt is more than a white seasoning sitting quietly on a kitchen table. It's one of the foundations of life on Earth and one of the most powerful substances ever to shape the rise and fall of civilizations. It has been with humanity since the moment we first tried to preserve meat. When we discovered that without salt the body cannot maintain its water balance, and eventually, that entire empires could thrive or collapse, depending on their access to this unassuming mineral. But salt is more than human history. It's a mineral without which no cell in your body can function. Electrical signals, nerve impulses, muscle tension, the heartbeat, the balance of fluids, all of it relies on sodium and chloride, the two ions that make up ordinary table salt. It's so fundamental to life that the first organisms emerged in salty oceans, and to this day, our bodies carry echoes of that ancient environment. Before salt reaches your table, before it crunches under your fingertips or dissolves in a pot, it travels a path that begins far deeper than most of us can imagine. Beneath the Earth's surface, under layers of rock, sediment, and time, lie enormous rock salt mines, silent archives of ancient seas. These are salt deserts trapped underground, remnants of prehistoric oceans that evaporated millions of years ago, leaving behind monumental deposits of halite, pure crystalline salt. Rock salt isn't created in a laboratory, nor is it a product of modern technology. It is the geological memory of the planet. Every block, every crystal carries the imprint of waters that once teemed with life that vanished long before humans ever appeared. Mining rock salt is, in many ways, uncovering history itself, literally. When miners enter these caverns, the world changes before their eyes. The air turns cool and dry, and the walls shimmer with fractured reflections from embedded crystals. In vast chambers, sometimes the size of cathedrals, the echoes of mining machines bounce off stone that hasn't seen sunlight in millions of years. The tools are modern now, but the principle is the same as it was centuries ago. Break the rock. Separate the salt from the earth trapped inside it and haul it to the surface. Once the work was done with picks and hammers under the flickering glow of oil lamps. Today, enormous mining machines bite into the rock like metal beasts, cutting through walls, grinding boulders, and sending the ore along conveyor belts that never stop moving. Yet despite the technological revolution, a salt mine remains a near mystical place, a labyrinth of darkness and glitter, where humans stand face to face with matter. Older than humanity itself, rock salt is considered the most primordial type of salt because it preserves the natural crystalline structure and undergoes minimal processing. After extraction, it is simply crushed, separated from the surrounding rock, and sorted by grain size. From it comes road salt, industrial salt, and table salt, though the latter must go through additional purification to remove minerals that, while natural, aren't always suitable for consumption. Interestingly, the color of rock salt often reveals its past. White means pure halite. Pink or reddish tones show traces of iron oxides. Gray indicates minerals from sediments that once settled at the bottom of an ancient sea. Each shade is a footnote in the geological timeline that shaped this extraordinary mineral. Mining rock salt isn't only industry and technology. It's a way of touching Earth's history. When you hold a simple lump of salt in your hand, you hold a fragment of an ocean that vanished millions of years ago, a piece of a world long gone, preserved in the most enduring form nature knows, a crystal. And this is only the beginning of our journey through different kinds of salt, each telling its own story about water, time, and humanity. If rock salt is the memory of ancient oceans trapped in stone, then sea salt is their living breath. It isn't formed underground but at the meeting point of the elements, where sunlight touches water, where wind sweeps across the sea's surface, and where time unfolds not in millions of years but in the rhythm of tides. Sea salt forms slowly, gently, almost ceremonially, crafted by nature itself. The process begins where calm bays and lagoons are separated from the open sea by a network of shallow pools. Seawater flows into the first basin like a traveler beginning a long journey. From one pool to the next, its level is carefully controlled, and natural evaporation concentrates its minerals. The process is simple, but it demands patience because sea salt does not tolerate haste. Every breeze, every degree of temperature, every ray of sunlight matters. When the salt concentration reaches the right level, crystals begin to form. At first they appear as a thin, shimmering glaze on the water's surface, delicate like ceramic varnish. Then they sink to the bottom, creating a layer of wet, glistening salt sand. This is the moment when salt workers enter the scene. With long wooden rakes, they gently gather the forming crystals, careful not to disturb their structure. There is something ritualistic about this movement repeated for thousands of years. Unchanged despite the age of machines, sea salt retains what the ocean gives it: magnesium, calcium, potassium, and countless microelements that make its flavor more complex than the pure halite from deep underground. Each coastline has its own mineral profile and therefore its own story hidden in the crystals. Salt from Brittany carries the breath of Atlantic winds. Sicilian sea salt holds the echo of Mediterranean sunlight. The salt from Japanese shores has the subtle sweetness of local algae. Unlike rock salt, sea salt doesn't require vast mines or heavy machinery. Its extraction is more collaboration with nature than a struggle against it. Humans don't carve into stone. They wait for the sun to evaporate the water. They don't crush boulders. They allow crystals to grow as nature intends. This is why no two grains of sea salt are identical. Some are sharper, some more rounded, their shape determined by weather, not by machines. This unpredictability is what makes sea salt so prized. It's like a handcrafted object, each batch a little different, each tied to a specific moment in time. When you sprinkle it onto a dish, you're adding not only flavor, but the story of the sunlight that evaporated the water, the winds that cleared the sky. The people who rise at dawn to tend the salt pools. Sea salt reminds us that sometimes the best things are born when humans step back and allow nature to work. It is salt shaped not by hammer but by sunlight, not in darkness, but under the open sky. And its taste remains pure and primordial, as if every crystal held a single drop of ocean within it. Himalayan salt carries a paradox. Though we associate it with the world's highest mountains, its story begins on the floor of ancient seas, long before the Himalayas rose toward the sky. Each of its crystals is a witness to a slow geological drama: oceans evaporating, continents colliding, the Earth's crust rising in a monumental mountain range. This salt predates humans, civilizations, and even most forms of life we know. Holding it in your hand is like holding a fragment of a world hundreds of millions of years old. Its characteristic? Pink color is neither artificial nor accidental. It comes from the abundance of minerals, especially iron trapped within its crystal lattice. Every shade, from pale apricot to deep red, is like a stamp of geological time. The more intense the color, the higher the iron content and the clearer the salt's ancient origins. This is why the pink salt from the Kura region of Pakistan, at the heart of the ancient Tethys Ocean, is so valued and recognizable. It formed where Earth's forces compressed layers of sediment into a mineral treasure with a character like no other. Mining Himalayan salt is unlike mining traditional European rock salt. Here, the walls aren't uniformly white, they glow like marble, shifting from pink to peach, from creamy beige to vivid red. The mines resemble vast stone cathedrals, but instead of cold gray rock, the chambers radiate a warm mineral light. Blocks are chipped away by hand or with light machinery, because heavy equipment could damage the crystals and their natural structure. It's more sculpting than industrial excavation. Once the salt reaches the surface, it is sorted by color and purpose. The purest blocks, with uniform tones and high clarity, become culinary salt or decorative salt lamps, objects believed in Eastern traditions to emit soft, calming light. More irregular pieces are ground into various grain sizes, from fine powder to large flakes, perfect for cooking. Its flavor differs from sea salt and rock salt. It's milder, less sharp, free from bitterness and moisture. This purity comes from its mineral makeup, untouched by the pollution of modern oceans or atmosphere. That's why Himalayan salt is often described as one of the most primordial and untouched forms of salt on Earth. Its crystals, unchanged by any contemporary environment, yet its pink hue and exotic origins have also turned it into a cultural symbol. For some, it's a luxury. For others, an essential tool for minimalist cooking, where just a few crystals can enhance a dish more elegantly than ordinary salt. For still others, it's part of wellness rituals, though not all of its claimed properties are scientifically proven. One thing is certain: its beauty and geological age command a natural sense of awe. Salt seems simple, ordinary, almost unremarkable. But when you look at it closely, truly closely, it begins to reveal another face. Not the kitchen one, but the atomic one. A face too small for our hands to grasp, hidden in microscopic spaces where matter arranges itself into shapes so precise they could have been drawn by mathematics itself. Every grain of salt, even the tiniest one, is a miniature world built from perfectly arranged ions. And although we rarely think about it while sprinkling it on an egg or into a soup, each of those grains is a piece of architecture. A cube so regular and repetitive it feels as if it were crafted by a watchmaker. Story of salt begins when two elements, sodium and chlorine, join together in a way that is both extremely simple and absolutely perfect. Sodium, a metal so reactive it can burst into flames when it touches water. Chlorine, a gas that in its pure form could be deadly. And yet, when sodium gives away its electron and chlorine accepts it, something like reconciliation happens. A pair of ions forms, entering a state of perfect harmony. Na and Cl become two parts of the same puzzle. And their attraction is so strong that together, they can build structures incredibly resistant to temperature, pressure, and time. When these ions begin to arrange themselves into a whole, they form a crystal of sodium chloride halite. That is why salt breaks into characteristic cubes instead of sharp, irregular fragments like rock. It is nature showing us its fondness for geometry. Inside a salt crystal lies an infinite three-dimensional chessboard, light ion, light dark, repeating itself to the limits of the structure. An invisible order the eye cannot see, yet one we can feel with our fingers when we rub two crystals together and hear that dry, brittle rasp dot, but structure is only one of salt's many faces. Its taste is another. Saltiness is not an accident or a whim of nature. It is a biological signal encoded in us like an ancient instinct. Our taste receptors respond specifically to the sodium ion. Whenever Na enters a taste cell, it triggers a microscopic electrical shift. A tiny current racing toward the brain, shouting, "This is salt." It's how our bodies recognize the substance without which we cannot regulate water balance, conduct nerve impulses, or make muscles contract. What's fascinating is that pure NaCl doesn't have a complex taste at all. It is one-dimensional, sharp, simple. What makes one salt subtle, another delicate? Another harsher mineral is not the sodium chloride itself, but all the traces nature has left in it over millions of years. Bitter magnesium, chalky calcium, a hint of heat from potassium, metallic echoes from iron. Each of these elements is a micro-story, a tiny signature written by nature on a specific type of salt. Yet the true magic of salt begins only once it touches water. Drop a crystal into a glass and you see only that it disappears. But in the microscale, a spectacle begins. The crystal structure breaks apart into individual ions, a crowd of tiny charges dancing among water molecules. Water wraps each ion separately, as if giving each one its own cloak. And because the ions are now free, they can move, and movement of charge is nothing else but electricity. That is why a salt solution conducts current so well, while solid salt does not conduct at all. This ability to fall apart into charged particles is what makes life possible. Our nerves function because sodium and potassium ions leap across cell membranes, creating electrical impulses. Our hearts beat because calcium ions trigger microbursts of energy in muscle cells. Salt is not a seasoning. It is a conductor. It is electricity. It is the fuel our cells depend on, not by burning it like sugar, but by using it as the key to communication. Even physically, salt behaves like a substance with personality. It dissolves quickly because its ionic lattice breaks apart easily in water. It loves moisture and absorbs it so eagerly that in humid air it begins to clump, grains merging as if trying to return to their original crystalline form. And when we try to melt it, we discover it requires temperatures higher than most metals in the kitchen. Its bonds are like microscopic grips that refuse to let go. We look at salt as a simple mineral, but once we descend into its nature, we discover it is something far more. It is geometry trapped in cubes. It is chemistry that tames two dangerous elements and turns them into the foundation of life. It is physics that governs conductivity and solubility. It is biology that allows cells to speak to one another in electric whispers. It is a taste encoded on our tongues for millions of years long before we developed culture or cuisine. Salt is one of the rare minerals that act as a bridge between the world of rocks and the world of blood. Between the ocean and the human. Between what is dead and what is alive. Though we keep it in an ordinary shaker, what it truly holds is a fragment of nature that is both simple and infinitely complex. Salt is not just a substance we add to food. It is microstructure, flavor, energy, history, and life. And every crystal, even the smallest one, is proof that the greatest stories sometimes fit into the smallest forms. Salt in your body behaves like a silent architect, constantly shaping the environment in which your cells work. We rarely think about water electrolyte balance in daily life, yet it persists within us unceasingly like the ebb and flow of the ocean. Every drop of water your body needs, every nerve impulse, every muscle movement, all of it depends on the delicate balance of sodium, potassium, and chloride ions. And salt is the key that opens the door to the system. To understand water electrolyte balance, imagine your body as a multi-level city of cells. Each cell is surrounded by a membrane, a sort of city gate that allows only those citizens whose names it recognizes. Water, vital for life, does not wander aimlessly. It follows sodium. Where there are more sodium ions, fluid flows to equalize osmotic pressure. It's a fundamental principle. Sodium pulls water just as the moon pulls the ocean. This is why, when the right amount of sodium circulates in your blood, cells stay in perfect form. They neither swell nor shrink. When sodium is too high, the body retains water, as if raising the level of a river. When sodium begins to run low, water leaves the cells, leaving them dehydrated, like parched plants. And so, day after day, night after night, your kidneys, hormones, and cell membranes conduct an endless dialogue, ensuring electrolyte levels remain as precise as if fine jewelry were being crafted. The hormone aldosterone, like the chief city controller, decides how much sodium to keep and how much to release into urine. The antidiuretic hormone, acts like a dam keeper, opening or closing the gates depending on whether the body needs to hydrate tissues or remove excess fluid. It is a subtle dance that unfolds every minute, without pause. When someone exercises intensely and loses sweat rich in sodium, this balance begins to waver. Nerve cells, particularly sensitive to osmotic pressure changes, send signals of disruption, dizziness, weakness, muscle cramps. It is the body trying to say, I'm low on salt. I cannot maintain water where it needs to be. On the other hand, excess salt is not without consequence. Water begins to accumulate in vessels like overflowing canals, and pressure rises because every drop of fluid must fit within the solid, yet limited space of blood vessels. Salt itself is not the problem, it is the lack of harmony with water. Water electrolyte balance is, therefore, a story of partnership. About water that follows sodium. About kidneys defending homeostasis like guardians of city walls. About cells needing a stable environment, just as city dwellers need clean streets. And at the very center of this story stands an unassuming substance, salt, which, through its simple nature, regulates one of life's most elegant and intricate functions. Imagine your body as a complex electrical network. Millions of wires that must transmit impulses at the perfect pace for everything to function smoothly. These wires are your nerves, and the energy that flows through them is not ordinary electricity from a wall socket, but microscopic ionic impulses. And this is where salt steps in as an absolutely crucial player. Every nerve impulse begins when a nerve cell changes its voltage from the inside. Rich in potassium and low in sodium, to the outside. Rich in sodium and low in potassium. This difference in ion concentrations, primarily sodium Na and potassium Ke, creates an electric field. Sodium acts like opening gates. When sodium channels in the cell membrane open, sodium ions rush into the neuron, triggering a sudden flow of current. This is depolarization, the start of an impulse, a flash in your body's electrical network. It is not a single spark. Sodium, combined with potassium, creates a rhythm. Na flows in, Ka flows out. The membrane returns to resting voltage, and the neuron is ready for the next impulse. The entire sequence repeats at speeds of tens of meters per second, and your hands, feet, heart, and facial muscles react in fractions of a second. Without sodium, this electricity falters, impulses weaken, muscles contract less efficiently, and the brain receives delayed signals. Muscles operate on the same principle. Every contraction begins with a nerve impulse reaching the muscle fiber. The impulse opens ion channels in the muscle cell membrane. Sodium and calcium ions flow inward, and the muscle contracts like a spring. Then, as ions flow out, the muscle relaxes, ready for the next movement. This cycle occurs hundreds of times per second, enabling everything from blinking an eye to a heartbeat. From reflexes to coordinated movements in dance or sports. This conduction is not just physiology, it is a true symphony of electrolytes, with salt playing the lead role. Without the proper levels of sodium and chloride, current flow becomes unreliable, nerve signals slow, muscles may tremble, and contractions can become uncontrolled. The body resembles a poorly wired electrical circuit, where impulses jump chaotically and lose strength. That is why salt is not just a seasoning or a mineral, it is what allows the body to maintain its internal electrical network. It is the key to communication between neurons, between brain and muscles, between thought and movement. Every heartbeat, every lift of the hand, every step depends on this invisible ionic electricity. In this sense, salt is the energy of life, the conductor of impulses, and the guardian of synchronization for all the processes that make us human. Capable of action, reaction, and sensation. For centuries, salt has been a symbol of life and power. And yet, for just as long, it has inspired fear. Too much salt is bad for you, we repeat to ourselves. And yet no one ever really asks what too much truly means or how this mineral infiltrates our daily lives. Salt, in its natural form, is an absolutely essential substance. Without it, there would be no water electrolyte balance, no nerve conduction, no muscle contractions. It allows every cell to function properly, keeps the heart beating rhythmically, and enables the brain to process thoughts. Yet, like everything essential, it can become dangerous when consumed in excess. Excess salt begins to act like a silent dictator slowly, subtly, almost imperceptibly. Every sodium molecule that isn't used for the body's basic functions remains in the bloodstream, attracting water. The fluid fills the blood vessels, raising blood pressure. Over time, the heart must work harder, pumping blood through this expanded network of vessels, while the walls of the arteries endure constant tension. This is a mechanism that, on one hand, allows the body to maintain blood volume and proper pressure, but on the other, when chronic, can lead to hypertension and strain on the cardiovascular system. But salt is not just a problem for the heart. The kidneys, those quiet, tireless guardians of homeostasis, are the first line of defense against excess sodium. Their job is to excrete the surplus sodium ions along with water, restoring balance. Yet when salt is consumed in amounts beyond the kidney's adaptive capacity, this mechanism begins to fail. Excess sodium in the body leads to fluid retention, swelling, and over the long term, overloads the kidneys and increases the risk of chronic kidney disease. The danger of too much salt doesn't stop with the cardiovascular system or the kidneys. In a body consuming excess salt, subtle but significant metabolic changes occur. Research shows that high sodium intake can increase calcium excretion in urine, promoting kidney stone formation. It can also affect the sensitivity of blood vessels and the endothelium, the thin layer of cells lining the arteries, making vessels less flexible and more prone to damage. These are not dramatic, immediate effects, but gradual processes that often take years before symptoms appear. At the same time, excess salt can influence the heart in subtler ways than we might imagine. Even in healthy individuals, over time it increases the risk of heart failure by raising blood volume and overloading the left ventricle. Elevated blood pressure, often unnoticed, is in fact a chronic stress on the entire circulatory system. That's why it's called a silent killer. Too much salt doesn't hurt right away, but works quietly year after year until the consequences become apparent. This does not mean, however, that salt itself is the enemy. The problem arises only in the context of the modern diet. Early humans consuming natural salt, sea salt, rock salt, Himalayan salt ingested much smaller amounts than the average modern consumer. Today's processed foods, fast foods, deli meats, cheeses, bread, all are hidden sources of salt, capable of raising daily intake to several times what the body actually needs. In this context, excess becomes a real threat, because the natural balance between sodium, potassium, magnesium, and other minerals, which in ancient times helped neutralize excess sodium is lost. It's also important to look at salt through the lens of metabolism. The body needs it to live, but can only use it within a certain range. Small excesses are absorbed and excreted without issue. Larger amounts begin to disrupt the delicate electrolyte balance. Moreover, excess sodium can affect thirst perception. The body tries to balance ion concentrations, prompting increased fluid intake, which in turn raises blood volume and places further strain on the heart and vessels. It's a subtle, almost invisible cycle, which over time can lead to health problems. Yet salt need not be an enemy. What determines whether it harms is dose and context. Proper salt intake supports the correct functioning of muscles, nerves, the circulatory system, and kidneys. It maintains water electrolyte balance, aids nutrient transport, and even helps regulate blood pressure in healthy bodies. Only when consumption exceeds the body's adaptive capacity does salt stop being a friend and become a burden to the system. Ultimately, salt in the body is a story of balance, between need and excess, between life and strain. It is a tale of how a single element can be both the foundation of health and a subtle risk factor if we do not approach it with moderation. In this sense, salt teaches us more than chemistry. It teaches wisdom, awareness of our own bodies, and the understanding that everything essential can become dangerous if consumed without restraint. Salt has always been more than just a seasoning. Long before refrigerators and modern preservation methods existed, humans discovered that salt could stop time or at least stop meat from spoiling. In centuries past, when a single winter journey through a village could mean no fresh food, salt was a true treasure. Meat would be layered in salt, fish packed into barrels soaked in brine, and this process not only protected against spoilage, but also naturally transformed the texture of the food. It penetrated the meat, dried the surface, inhibited bacterial growth, and at the same time allowed flavors and aromas to intensify. In this way, salt became the first preservative, the first method of storing food that allowed humans to control its longevity and availability. But salt does more than guard freshness. It also has an extraordinary ability to enhance flavor, something many take for granted because it seems natural. When salt enters a dish, it begins interacting with other ingredients on a chemical level. It works with proteins, altering their structure and making flavors more pronounced. When salt touches the surface of meat or vegetables, microscopic water molecules react with it, loosening cells and releasing aromas and essences that would otherwise remain hidden. That is why even a pinch of salt can completely transform a dish, bringing out depth, balancing bitterness, softening acidity, and creating harmony in every bite. Salt is also a master of contrasts. Added to sweet foods, it highlights their aroma and balances flavor. In chocolate, caramel, or fruit, it creates a subtle equilibrium that makes the taste richer and more complex. In meat or fish, it can accentuate natural sweetness and umami, making the dish feel fuller, more satisfying, more complete. This is its unique ability not to impose flavor, but to collaborate with what is already there. Like a guide leading our taste buds to where nature intended. In the kitchen, salt is also a carrier of texture. Seasoning meat with coarse salt before roasting or frying creates a light, crispy crust that locks in juices. Delicate flakes of salt on salads or desserts provide a delightful crunch, enhancing the sensory experience of eating. It's not just taste, it's a full sensory performance in which salt plays the lead role. Salt's properties are also crucial in fermentation. In pickling, salt regulates the pace of fermentation, inhibits harmful microorganisms, and simultaneously allows beneficial ones, which create probiotics to thrive. Thanks to it, cabbage transforms into tangy, aromatic, long-lasting sauerkraut, and cucumbers become crisp, flavorful vegetables that can be stored for months. In times past, salt was so valuable precisely because its properties preserve food for winter, enhanced the flavor of daily meals, and added texture, aroma, and complexity. It is no coincidence that wherever salt was accessible, culinary cultures flourished with refined flavors and long-lasting foods. Even today, in the era of refrigerators and modern technology, salt remains indispensable in the kitchen and on the table, in the chemical processes that unlock flavor, and in the history that teaches us how a single substance can protect food, reveal its potential, and bring harmony to every bite. Salt is like a quiet artist in the kitchen. It never shouts, never imposes, yet shapes the entire experience. Without it, meat would be bland and perishable, vegetables lifeless, and the flavor of dishes flat and one-dimensional. It is thanks to salt that food can smell, taste, endure, and delight in every era, every home, and every kitchen around the world. Salt has always been more than just a seasoning. For thousands of years, it has held a magic that made it more valuable than gold. In ancient and medieval times, salt was so prized that it was transported over vast distances. Wars were fought for access to it, and cities rose or fell depending on who controlled its sources. In the Roman Empire, there was a saying, "Life without salt is like life without money." It's no wonder. Since soldiers received part of their pay in salt giving birth to the word salary from the Latin salarium, meaning money for salt. Imagine that every single piece of salt back then was like a tiny treasure, preserving life, securing food, and providing a sense of safety. The history of salt is full of fascinating contrasts. In China, as early as 2000 BCE, salt was extracted from hot springs and played a crucial role in state finances. Government taxes on salt were among the first recorded taxes in the world. In Africa, across the Sahara, salt caravans traversed thousands of kilometers, exchanging salt for gold, spices, and other goods. In Europe, salt was so valuable that in some places it was called white gold. In medieval Venice, it was traded almost like currency, and control over salt-producing islands in the Adriatic Sea meant wealth and power. Today, the world's largest salt mines resemble underground cities. Cura in Pakistan, one of the oldest rock salt mines, stretches for dozens of kilometers of corridors and tunnels filled with pink crystals, remembering oceans from hundreds of millions of years ago. In Europe, vast deposits are found in Wielika and Bochnia in Poland mines that not only supplied salt but became pilgrimage sites, underground architecture, and works of art. In North America, salt mines exist in New York and Michigan, and in Germany. The largest mines supply salt both for industry and for consumption, including the largest producers of road salt. Each of these mines is a microcosm of work, history, and geology, a place where the mineral reminds us of its value every day. Salt also holds surprises that may astonish. Did you know that some types of salt are fluorescent? Himalayan salt lamps emit a gentle glow, which is actually the result of natural mineral inclusions in the crystals. Or that salt was once used in religious and magical rituals. In many cultures, it was considered protection against evil spirits. Throwing salt behind you when crossing a doorway was thought to ward off bad forces. Another intriguing fact: salt can melt ice. This is not magic, but physics. Salt lowers the freezing point of water, which is why for centuries people spread it on roads in winter, long before chemical de-icing mixtures were invented. It's a simple, natural property that helps survive harsh winters and avoid transportation disasters. And finally, something personal, almost poetic. Each crystal of salt is a tiny capsule of Earth's history. Ocean water that evaporated millions of years ago, minerals trapped in the salt, the movement of continents, geological processes all recorded in the microstructure of the crystal. Holding it in your hand is like holding a piece of ancient seas that existed long before civilization. It's fascinating that something as ordinary as salt, sitting on a kitchen table, can also be a witness to the history of the planet, the economy, culture, and human daily life. Salt has been, is, and will always be more than a seasoning. It has been currency, a strategic resource, medicine, a preservative, and a bit of kitchen magic. It is a mineral that bridges nature and culture, geology and history, science, and the everyday experience of taste. And though most of us can now buy it for a few cents at the supermarket, every single grain still holds a story that stretches back thousands of years, a story of life, survival, and the enduring value of this white crystal, once more precious than gold.